Hey everyone, welcome to a special bonus episode of I Heart Movies. My name is Jonathan North, and as most of you know, I'm a writer for Rotoscopers.com, an animation news and reviews website, and occasionally will get an offer to interview someone in the film industry, from animators to directors to writers and more. This week I got the opportunity to interview Leslie Iwerks, director of the upcoming Disney Plus series, The Imagineering Story, a documentary series looking into the stories behind Disneyland, Disney World, Epcot, and so many other Disney theme parks around the world. If the name Iwerks sounds familiar to you, it's because Leslie is actually the granddaughter of Ub Iwerks, Walt Disney's partner and the co-creator of Mickey Mouse. We get into that a little, as well as talking about her work on the Imagineering Story and a bit about the Disney legacy.
Hi, Jonathan. Leslie.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for doing this interview with me today.
Of course.
Okay, so to start out, for those of our readers who may not know who you are, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Leslie Iwerks. I'm a filmmaker, largely doing documentaries for the past almost 20 years. And I've covered a wide variety of subject matters in my films, from movies and entertainment and animation to environmental issues, social issues, political issues. Currently getting ready to launch my latest 6-hour series on the Imagineers called The Imagineering Story.
Mm-hmm. And I know for most of our reader base, it will be interesting for them. So you have a familial connection to the Walt Disney legacy. Can you tell us just a little bit about that too?
Yeah, my dad and grandfather both worked at Disney. My grandfather started with Walt back in 1918-ish, 1919. And they were, business partners and friends and collaborators on early animated films. And then he came out and met with Walt in California and animated the Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cartoons, Alice in Cartoonland, and Mickey Mouse. He co-created Mickey Mouse with Walt and animated the early cartoons, and then was a chief pioneering technical genius for the studio, innovating on projection systems and cameras and technologies that help to further the Disney films and theme parks in new innovative ways.
And I noticed that your dad was featured in the episodes that I got to preview before the interview. Were you involved in interviewing him at all?
Yeah, I interviewed everybody, and
Okay.
so, did all the research and questions and
Mm-hmm.
was there filming with everybody. So, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed there was a big chunk of it was up-to-date interviews, and some of it was like archive footage. Do you know, was it mostly new interviews, or was there a lot of archive throughout the whole series?
I would say we did around 250 interviews, individual interviews,
Wow.
for the whole show, traveling around the world and interviewing folks. But there were a lot of people we interviewed multiple times, and there were a lot of, not sit downs, but like capturing people in the field working on stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So it all amounted to, a number of sit down formal interviews, and then a lot of like in the field verite interviews, and then the archival interviews amounted to a whole lot more.
Mm-hmm. So I was curious, because you have such a long history with like doing documentaries and stuff, was this Disney project your idea, or was this something that Disney brought you onto?
They brought me onto it after seeing this Pixar story at Imagineering,
Okay.
and Marty Sklar really liked that and said, "When are you going to do the Imagineering Story?" And I said, "You tell me," and kind of started talking about that because I was quite excited about that opportunity, and that he saw how Imagineering would be a great story, and he knew a hell of a lot more than I ever did because he was there, and so I said, "Well, you gotta kind of help me figure out what the story is, So we sat down and I worked out kind of a story structure, did a lot of research, and then, he helped as well. We went back and forth on email on a bunch of different versions of the outline, and he illuminated me into a lot of things I didn't know. And so it was great. It was very fortunate and fortuitous that I had Marty to help in those early days. And I think the series is largely expanded upon from that original outline, and went in new directions here and there, but overall the major story beats are there, and so his DNA is in this series, and so very fortunate with that.
Mm-hmm. So was the project originally conceived as a series, or did it start out as a film?
It started out as a 90-minute film
Okay.
that was commissioned over 5 years. So Imagineering said, we want to hire you for 5 years to document the behind the scenes of the parks and, the making of Shanghai Disneyland as well.
Okay.
And figure out the best way to tell that story. So that's how that happened. And so instead of, getting a budget for what I thought would be like a year and a half of work, turned out to be 5 years. And then after we had our first cut, it was this amorphous, really long cut. And it was just almost impossible to say we could do a 90-minute film based on the amount of material we got in the can, that so much would be left on the cutting room floor. So I suggested Disney, would you guys consider taking this into a series and probably get a lot more bang for your buck in that sense. And so anyway, that's kind of what happened. And Disney Plus came along shortly thereafter and learned of this project, and then said, why don't we take it over and acquire it from Imagineering, and then we'll fund the completion of it, and then gave me some good insight as to what might be good for additional filming, and we collaborated together on that. And so we filmed this spring, both in Anaheim and Orlando, for final filming and interviews, and then really got into the archives and was able to get funding for further research and deep digging and money to get things transferred and all that stuff. So that really helped from a creative standpoint of getting high-res footage of material that no one's ever seen before.
Yeah, when I was watching the first 2 episodes, I was thinking to myself, they're covering a lot, but also knowing that this is only the very beginning, I was just wondering, this probably started as a film, and then Disney Plus is like the perfect outlet for something like this. I just thought that was such a great idea to have it as a series.
Yeah, I mean, we would have never known that when we started, that this would be the outcome. And you just, I don't know, have patience in the process, and trust that if you make a good product, it will be seen at some point, somewhere, or it will get acquired by some entity who will help to turn it into something even greater,
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people don't know a lot about like the behind the scenes stuff for like movies, even theme parks. And I think that this is just the perfect opportunity to teach people that what all goes into making something like that. Because like I'm interested in that kind of stuff, but I'm like interested in a lot of like nitty gritty stuff. Disney Plus is like, I don't know, it just seems like the perfect way to get like the general public more interested in this kind of thing.
For sure. And it's done in a way where it's personal, with characters that real people that already have a fan base within the Disney world. And so we get to see them in a more personal setting as well. And so that's nice.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what's in the rest of the episodes that I haven't gotten to watch yet. The first 2 are so interesting. I'm really excited to see more of the modern day stuff.
Cool. Yeah, episode 6 is one of my favorite episodes, and I think largely, because we can all relate to it more than some of the other episodes that are kind of historical. We weren't there when they happened, but Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and, the current projects, we all sort of grew up around, and so that's fun to see how those evolve.
That's going to be so interesting. What would you say, filming this whole thing, did you have like a favorite part, or like you have the favorite episode 6, but like throughout the whole thing, was there just something that really stands out to you as like the best part of the whole experience?
I have moments that I like, that I felt like were points I really wanted to get out, like the Roy Disney section in episode 2. I really wanted to make sure that we had a bow to Roy a little bit, because of all the hard work that he did. And I just feel like Walt Disney gets so much of the credit, as he should, but his brother Roy was so instrumental in getting the financing in place to make these projects happen. And it was just kind of interesting when we got a hold of one of Roy's audio interviews from back in the 60s, I guess it was, or early 70s, and during the time he was building, Walt Disney World. And, you just realize how much he was doing this for his brother, and that creative spirit that he felt when his brother was no longer around, that he got to work with the Imagineers and really get a sense of all the things his brother had pushed. So it seemed like there was I don't know, not newfound, but a very personal appreciation for his own brother that he must have had. And I'm, I don't know for sure, but I'm based on my own feelings. I feel like he would have felt this towards his brother, that, a newfound appreciation for his creative spirit and his risk taking. And also I think that, not very often do you hear Walt really, complimenting his brother either. And so I wanted to get those audio interviews in, to really have the audience feel this brotherly love and the spirit that was there. And, there was a point in time where those two didn't really speak, and they had a bit of a falling out, which we don't really go into, but because there's so many storylines we can get into on this project, that we didn't use, but at the end of the day, it's so rare to have two brothers that have created such a big enterprise, that launched the Disney company. And so that was fun, to sort of, and I knew Roy E. quite well. I like to consider Roy E. like, he was like an early mentor for me, because he helped to greenlight My Hand Behind the Mouse film on my grandfather, and he was a real champion of that, and champion of my work as I moved forward in my career, and always took meetings with me, and was just became a friend. He was a family friend. And so I just, had Roy in the back of my mind too while I was making this, and I wanted the film to feel like it was told from a family member,
Yeah, it's nice that the two families still are kind of connected in that way.
Yeah, and my grandfather was friends with Roy, and obviously grew up with Walt, and so, and Roy E. really respected my grandfather and was friends with my dad, and so all that was cool, So anyway, I have a special tie to the Disney history, and felt like now, as an outsider but still kind of an insider, to be able to witness and partake in what's going on in Imagineering, and witness all these geniuses that are just doing their thing, continuing that DNA of Disney and that spirit, and appreciating those that came before them. And so many people speak so lovingly of their predecessors. And as I say, they stand on the shoulders of those who came before. And a lot of regimes or administrations will, wipe out, when they come in and take over, they want to start fresh with a clean slate. But in this case, I feel like so much of Disney's success is about knowing what that Disney DNA is, and not forgetting it. And I think you'll see that in future episodes where certain mistakes are made, because they bring in a whole new regime, and things aren't appreciated or revered like they should,
I think you can even see that in, like, the Disney fans have, like, they've grouped all the movies into, like, eras, I guess you would say. And they have, like, the ones that the decade that goes through most of the 80s, I think they call it the Bronze Age of Disney. But then when you get to The Little Mermaid, it's kind of like going back to all of the old principles that Disney used to use for his films. And once they got back into those principles, it just brought new life into all the movies after that.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Well put.
So I'm sure that you learned, like, a lot of Disney history in the process of making the series, but was there anything that you learned that really surprised you?
Every decade has its own surprises and its own stories. I think the Disney California Adventure story was interesting, and to hear it from Michael Eisner's point of view. We interviewed Michael Eisner and hear his story And, I think to me, he was an illuminating interview, as was Bob Iger, just to kind of get their points of view from a top level business standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
and how things were run. But I think at the end of the day, this film is, kind of a combination of three storylines that are all interwoven. And one is, the Imagineers story and their own technical challenges, creative challenges, and what they're tasked to do and how do they overcome it, given the rope that they're given, the leash, so to speak, the amount of money or the amount of time or what the resources they have, what can they do within that? That's the Imagineers challenge. And then you got the second layer, which is, the CEO and the overall company administration,
Mm-hmm.
who inspired what, and what was the take by various regimes above Imagineering on what Imagineering did. And so did they creatively inspire them? Did they curtail them? Did they hold them back from financial reasons? Like, what were the things that, that impacted Imagineering from that level? And then the third level is the overall arc, which is, what's happening in the world around them that impacts them as well. So it's, whether it be economics or it's, natural disasters or you name it,
Mm-hmm.
weather, anything beyond their control, so to speak, that impacts how they do their jobs and how they achieve their goals.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I only have just like one more kind of a question. I always think that when we hear interviews, I've heard people talk about what they wish people would ask them. So, in doing all these interviews, is there something you want to talk about that you almost never get asked, or anything that you want everyone listening or reading to know?
I think my takeaway on this film was that, Walt Disney created the happiest place on earth, but when you really look behind the curtain, creating happiness is hard work, and that became our through line. And I hope that people that watch this film will have a newfound respect for the work and the time and the people behind all these amazing experiences that we experience in a park. And I was just the lucky one to be able to tell the story, and hope that I did it as good as how they do their parks.
Yeah.
So I also always try to give a nod to my crew, my editors, Mark and Mo and Ian and the gang who edited this film, the series, because it was just a huge monumental effort to go through all that material
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh, yeah.
cull it down, and to have a great team of storytellers as editors, was a real gift. And as we all know with editors, it can go really good or really bad, and I felt like I was on the lucky side to have such a great team of really passionate editors.
I can tell from the finished product, the episodes that I saw looked really good.
Thanks. Yeah, I look forward to you seeing the rest, and let me know what you think.
Yeah, I'm
Given
excited
you're
to
such a
watch
big
them.
Disney fan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where are you based? Are you out here in LA, or are you?
No, I'm actually in Iowa.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah,
Awesome.
the website is based in Arizona, but she's collected writers from all over the world, and we're everywhere.
Oh, that's nice. Well, that's cool. Well, I hope that answers a lot of your questions.
Yeah, my last thing, I was just going to ask if you had any like social media or anything where you want people to go and check out anything.
Yeah, that's a good question. We have our Iwerks and Co. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then our website as well has photos and stuff like that on it. But iwerksandco.com. And I think as we ramp up towards the opening to the launch, we're going to start. We're posting a lot now, but it's going to get even more populated with behind the scenes stories, trivia, photos, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll continue to happen over the course of the 6 weeks and beyond as the series unveils on Disney Plus. So tune into our socials and our Facebook, but also Disney Plus is going to be doing their own rollout as well. So it's the Disney Plus socials and Disney Plus itself
Mm-hmm.
when it airs. So
Yeah, I'll make sure to have links in my article for all your social media so people can find you and check out your stuff.
awesome. Great. Appreciate that.
Yep. Okay, well, thank you so much for doing this interview.
All right. Thank you for doing it. Appreciate it. Look
Yeah,
forward to reading it.
I'll send a
All
link
right.
when it's finished to your publicist or whoever I've been communicating to.
Right. Terry. Perfect. Sounds awesome.
Well, thanks again. You have
All
a
right.
great day.
All right. You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks again to Leslie for taking time out of her day to do this interview with me. If you'd like more info on her work, I'll have all her links in the description. As with the previous interview I did for the Rotoscopers, this audio was recorded for an article I wrote for the website, so if you'd like to read that, I'll have that linked in the description as well. Thank you all so much for listening, and we'll see you next time for more on I Heart Movies.